It's not my responsibility to make other people feel good, only to witness and to help. So how somebody else feels is not my responsibility, just like how somebody else reacts is not my responsibility. I'm excited to tune back in for another episode of The Wild Way Home, and I hadn't posted in a little bit because I was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to say, and I had lost a little bit of touch with my voice and my why. I will share that story eventually, but for today I want to share the notes from a significant integration meeting when I was at an ayahuasca retreat. So when I was there, it was group centered, so we would walk into the Malacca, this unenclosed space with hardwood floors, and it was a sacred space that we would all go in. You take your shoes off and you sit. At the very beginning of the retreat, when we had our first community meeting, we talked about the things that we wanted to work on and work through. And they also taught us the purpose of ayahuasca and said, a lot of people come here to feel better and to just fix their problems and have some revelation and move forward. But if you don't integrate things, you're not going to take anything back with you. It's just going to be an experience you had one time. Beyond the medicine, I think there's also a lot of good lessons that I learned in those circles, and so I wanted to share that today. It's not my responsibility to make other people feel good, only to witness and to help. So how somebody else feels is not my responsibility, just like how somebody else reacts is not my responsibility. And I think that's something that maybe we forget, and I think that a lot of women struggle with, is we feel so responsible for the emotions of other people. And anybody who has empathy or who is very in touch with their own emotions, or especially the emotions of others, we step into this role of wanting to protect, to nurture, to fix, to repair. And other people's emotions are not our responsibility. We can witness and we can help, but we can't fix and repair. The way that they explained it was somewhere along the way, you began taking accountability for managing other people's emotions and reactions. And again, that's not your responsibility. And I say that and I harp on it because it's so important and it's become so ingrained in us. I know it was something that was very impactful to me when I heard it, because that's something that I lived my life doing. I was constantly trying to go behind and sweep up messes other people made, make other people feel more comfortable, and trying to manage situations and other people's emotions. And on top of that, now we start adding layers, because boundaries, sometimes it might create a reaction or emotion in someone else, but if it's my boundary, I can't also then soothe this person without letting go of my boundary. So sometimes you have to stand on your boundary, even when it hurts you, because you want to help, because you see somebody not sitting well with it. We have to respect ourselves first and be able to impart those boundaries. And that's something that's so hard. That's why all the people pleasers in the world have a really hard time enforcing boundaries. Because I care about you and I see that my boundary is something that you're not okay with, something that makes you unhappy. But what happens if I let go of my boundary and then I people please? Now I'm abandoning myself. I'm letting myself down. And that boundary had a purpose. Whether it was it kept me from being uncomfortable, it kept me safe, it kept me heard, it kept me respected. If I let that boundary go, now anybody can treat me in any way that they want, or whatever the situation is. We hold, and we create boundaries for a reason. One of the other really big pearls that came from it, and it's nothing new, it's just another way to frame it, and I think a great reminder is that the world is a stage and we are all playing a role. I think I first heard of this on a Know Thyself podcast, or through Dolores Cannon's work a few years ago. And all of this, this is all just a costume. The world is a stage. We are all playing a role that we came here to play. And it's not that it's not real. It's that we are in the school of earth. We are here. We are in an experience. This is our lived experience. We are accruing the lessons. We are making decisions. We are making mistakes. But we're all here learning. And we have the capacity, if we have the belief, to change what's going on in our world at any time. And I'll get into that in later podcasts about like creating your own reality, but we're all playing a role, and you can step into whatever role that you want at any time. So the world is just a stage. We literally decide everything that goes on in our lives. The world is your oyster, to start mixing metaphors. So some of the other notes that I have moving into this, I want to get into an exercise that we went through that was so powerful. So before I get into that, something that I wrote down was compassion fatigue means that we don't have compassion for ourselves. So going back to the boundary setting thing, I might have compassion fatigue if I'm taking care of all of these other people and I keep abandoning myself. That's how I burn out. That's how I detach. That's how I stop feeling things. And compassion fatigue means we don't have compassion for ourselves is a quote from Gabor Mate. Something else that I wanted to go over today is an exercise that we went through at the ayahuasca retreat in the community circle. And I thought it was really important because it makes you think about your feeling. It makes you question what you're feeling. It makes you stop, pause, and reflect on it. It makes you stop, pause, and reflect on the things that you haven't been feeling. And for most of the room, it actually brought up tears. So you're in partners, and one partner is asking the questions, and they don't give any sort of a reaction. They don't give any sort of a response. You're actually not allowed to make that person feel heard or to nod your head or to exude any comfort, because it's not about you. And it's also really hard to not provide that support. So it's an exercise for the person asking the questions. But then for the person answering the questions, you just receive these 3 questions and you have to sit with it and answer. And so these questions are, number 1, what do you try not to feel? Number 2, how does that impact your life? And number 3, what does it feel like to acknowledge that? Now, I know that there are a lot of exercises like this in the trauma healing world, in every relatable world. It's all about learning to emote better and to understand and integrate better. So if you sit with that, even if you don't have a partner, walk yourself through those 3 questions. What do I try not to feel? Sit with it. Give yourself a few minutes. How does that impact my life? And what does it feel like to acknowledge that? Give yourself the time and space that you need to get through those 3 questions. And if you have a partner, I think that's a great exercise to not only do for the individual growth, but so that you can see each other and really connect. So when I went through this exercise, each iteration that I did this multiple times. The words that I said were, I try not to feel misunderstood. I try not to feel vulnerable. I try not to feel hurt, sad, stupid, wrong, angry. And these are all things that I've had to work through, because as I went one by one, I would say, okay, I try not to feel misunderstood. How does that impact my life? Well, I over-explain, I overshare, and I try to make people understand. What does it feel like to acknowledge that? Eye-opening. And then moving into the next one. So I said misunderstood, and then I said vulnerable. What do you try not to feel? Vulnerable. How does that impact your life? I have this firm exterior that shows I'm fine and tries to control the strong image that everybody sees so that I'm not seen as weak or crazy. And I try to be on guard so I'm not taken advantage of. And I avoid feeling vulnerable enough to be wrong. Wow. What does it feel like to acknowledge that? It's sad. All right, so moving on to the next one. What do you try not to feel? I try not to feel sad. How does that impact your life? I bottle things up, I detach, I don't acknowledge them, I end up being robotic, and I feel further away from myself, my authenticity, my empathy, and my compassion. What does it feel like to acknowledge that? Heartbreaking. So whether you're going through this yourself or whether you're going through this with a partner, it creates a transparent lens through which you can see the other person or you can see yourself, because you have to sit with it and get real. You have to get rid of all your bullshit and sit with yourself and listen to all the things that you've been pushing down. And this is the beginning of going into that dark place where you put all of the things that you never wanted to talk about, that maybe you're ashamed of, or that maybe you're embarrassed by. The things that are vulnerable that you're like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody, including myself, finds out about this. We're just going to put this in this dark place, lock it away, and never think of it again. And those are the things that are creating these little patterns in our lives that we keep drawing towards us, because even though we're trying not to think about them, even though we're trying not to address them, we are constantly bringing them into our lives. We're constantly drawing them in by not working on them. If I, for example, my last one, just because I have a good example with this, if I try not to feel angry, guess what I've attracted in so many relationships? I've attracted angry people because I'm running from anger. And so if we can start to connect the dots, connect the pieces, acknowledge what comes up, and then work through those and do all of the work associated with healing those specific wounds, now we can become more whole. Now we can move through life. Now we can stop having these patterns. And that's the tip of the iceberg. So I hope that you will sit down and you will do this practice and you will try it. Let me know in the comments if you do, maybe what one of your words was, or how it impacts your life, or how it felt to acknowledge it. I think it's a really powerful exercise, and my hope is that you can take this and grow and maybe connect with yourself or connect with your partner.